Hello and welcome to the next episode of Cylinder Radio. I'm your host, Will Roosh, a high school teacher in Los Angeles and now podcast host. And today I'm doing something a little bit different. We're going to take some risks here and try something new. And the topic for today is being social on social media. So my guest today, Daniel Barnard, I met with air quotes on social media in a comment section. And we were disagreeing on some things. And I said, well, let's take it outside. Let's take it to the podcast and let's see where this goes. And I think one of the cool things about having a podcast is you can make up the rules. So I'm kind of like, let's see what happens. And I've invited a lot of people on before, and Daniel's the first one to actually take me up. Actually, I did Arman Foladpuri, who I had on earlier to talk about religious intolerance and Islamophobia, actually did meet in a similar way. But Daniel took me up on it. So we actually just talked for like 5 minutes before we started recording, but I'd like to formally get to know you as well. Daniel, thank you for coming on here, and let's kind of see where this goes. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Yeah, I'm Daniel Barnard. I have recently become a permanent resident of the United States. I live in Philadelphia, and I'm a stand-up comedian by trade and filmmaker as well, although that's slightly newer.
Nice. So we met in do you remember what the page was? Was it a Democratic Socialist page?
It was, I don't remember specifically the page. I do know it was but it was Bernie Sanders meme page,
Okay.
I think.
Yeah.
It was definitely a left-leaning. I saw your comment sort of as, fair game because it was a leftist leaning page, and your comment was not necessarily anti-leftist, but I think it mentioned socialism. I actually don't remember specifically what triggered me, but I was triggered. It is an apt use of the word.
Yeah.
Because I have an interesting relationship with social media, specifically with the comment section. It is somewhat of an addiction, perhaps, that I've had to really quash down to. I actually do it now in the morning in the bathroom when I'm going through my bathroom routine.
Yeah.
That's where, just so next time, if ever we interact on social media, you'll know exactly what I'm doing.
Like a Ziploc bag in the shower?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I do remember that morning I had, I think, replied to various comments. I sort of, the thing I do, which I think is probably not healthy behavior, is I will go into posts deliberately into the comments to look for things that will bait me, or that I will respond to, or that I think I can attack, and I'll do that on the left-wing ones, and I'll often go to sort of right-wing leaning meme pages and do similar stuff. I used to be on Twitter, but I actually had to stop Twitter. Twitter's more serious, I think, isn't it? Twitter. Sorry, if your audience doesn't understand.
No, we got you.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, okay. So I think this is a great place to start, because I think that you are incredibly normal in this way. I don't think that this is something that is unusual at all. The idea of almost being addicted to commenting and the interaction on these comments sections of social media. I do a similar thing where I follow, because I'm part of Heterodox Academy with my group on the discussion group that we have on Facebook. And part of that is trying to get views on both sides. So I do follow a bunch of, Democratic Socialist, far left type pages. I do follow right pages. I follow, Turning Point USA or something like that. And then I follow, Democratic Socialists of America. And then I follow a bunch of social justice advocates, and I follow a bunch of the intellectual dark web people. And I kind of get a mix, and I dip my toe in from time to time and just ask questions or propose like an idea. I stay away from name calling or anything like that, and just like get people to think. And I have a tough time. I'm always in teacher mode, so it's hard for me to take off my teacher hat, which is really annoying for people around me. But I go in to try and just like spark some sort of like metacognition. My last episode of Cylinder Radio, I had on Reed, who does street epistemology. And I was so kind of fascinated by what he does, because I do a level of that in my daily interactions, where just getting people like, maybe there's a part of this that you haven't thought about, just posing it out in a very anonymous way. And again, it's kind of like you said, but similar in like, I'm kind of fishing for someone to say good point or no because, and I think I'm kind of looking for that interaction. Is that something similar? Like, what kind of comments do you look for? Do you look to just highlight the errors in people's thinking a little bit?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's not something I'd ever thought about until you suggested or invited me on to this last week. I started to think, oh, well, why do I do this? What's the kind of motivation? And I think some of it is just a lack of that in my day-to-day real life interactions. So I actually think it's quite hard maybe for people who are interested in politics to talk about politics, especially with people with a differing point of view, because you tend to silo, don't you, socially? People tend to end up mixing with people with a vaguely similar, if not the same, worldview. So I think for me, that's definitely true for me as well. And being new to this country as well, I haven't got just that many kind of relationships where I can talk about, that kind of thing. So I think actually, since coming over here from London, I've probably started more with this kind of thing, just because I lack in real life that kind of interaction. And then I think another part of it is I do like confrontation. So, I don't know if I thought, because initially I thought, oh, I'm out there to change minds, but I thought that I don't know if I care if their mind has changed really at all. I
Just
think
fun to
part of
stir the
it is,
pot.
yeah, I mean, I do. It's not to say that I'm disingenuous on my views, or I'm trolling in that I do feel passionately about the kind of things I tend to comment about. So it's not completely hollow, it is like it comes from a kind of, I can't believe you don't think this.
Yeah.
And then B, listen to my opinion, idiot. That's what I think. That's sort of what's motivating me, probably.
Yeah, I went on because I do follow a bunch of people who are deep in the social justice, and I went on I believe her name is Rachel Cargill, I think that's her name, and she posted something at the beginning of Black History Month about the Emancipation Compensation Act, and about how even during emancipation, like white privilege prevailed or something like that. And I made a comment like something along the lines of, we have a very checkered past here in America, and it's important to reconcile the checkered past that we have with all of the great strides that we've made, and have gratitude for the great strides that we made, or something along those lines. And the Twitter, Instagram mob came after me and just, I was a racist and I was a horrible person. And probably 100 people came after me, and all 100 of them, I said, would you come on the podcast and so we can talk this out? And I think you'll see that I'm actually not racist, and what I'm saying actually has some merit. I'm a history teacher and stuff. And no one took me up on it. But I also made a comment before on like a MAGA, pro-right comment, something like, blah, 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 short-sighted. And someone called me a pussy and stuff like that. And I was like, I'm not a tough guy at all, but like, as far as school teachers go, I mean, I train a lot in boxing and jiu-jitsu and stuff like that.
Well, I've actually started following your Instagram.
Oh, okay.
And I would say that if you're not a tough guy, then I'm operating on a very terrifying scale, because I certainly couldn't deadlift anything. I don't think I'd struggle with the bar without the weights on the end. So yeah, I think you could definitely not a pussy. I think that's fair to say.
I think more than well, thank you. I'll take a compliment. But what I did was I was like, oh, you're in California. I was like, I have a lot of friends because I've been in martial arts for a while and doing boxing and stuff like that, Muay Thai. And I was like, hey, would you want to go meet at one of these gyms? And, maybe we can like have some rounds. We can spar a little bit, put on 16-ounce gloves, or, do some jiu-jitsu or something like that. Like, I've been training jiu-jitsu for 10 years and, I compete all the time.
You said that in response to someone saying, right, okay, that's an interest. You've escalated it there.
I
to
did.
Physical violence.
Well, Yes,
That
because
sounds,
I
that's like
essentially,
Antifa. You're like Antifa.
I guess. Well, I don't know, because I said, if do you want to do this, and I'm not scared to get into, like, I mean, I don't want to fight on the street, but going to,
Yeah.
a gym where there's people there and it's in, like, put on some gloves and spar. I'm open to that, because I've been punched in the face by legitimate tough guys a lot. I've got my butt kicked enough that it's like, it's not super scary to me in a controlled environment. I don't want to get into a street fight, but in a controlled environment. And he was like, well, no. He's like, I was just talking. He's like, I don't think it would be fair, because, I don't know anything about fighting. And I was like, well, yeah. So you got to maybe be careful about, calling people pussies or saying you're going to kick their ass or something like that. And I just was kind of playing around, just like, I guess it was like escalating it. I mean, we
No,
were,
I understand. I mean, I don't.
yeah.
Yeah, I understand exactly where you're coming from there.
So I guess I'm trying to do what we're doing here, which is turn, like, social media into something real. I think that there's a feeling like there aren't other people on the other side of that screen. And so people say whatever they're going to say, and, say really vicious things and horrible things. And I kind of want to just sometimes, like with this person in particular, say like, well, let's see. If maybe I am, maybe you're tougher. And if you beat me up, cool, props to you. Because I get beat up all the time by people tougher than me. Or even with the people before, or yourself, it's like, well, if we disagree, let's talk and find out where we disagree. And I guess that's kind of what I'm aiming for, is like to turn something that seems like it's not real into something real. Because I think then the humanity of all of us comes out pretty quickly. The guy who I'm talking about, he ended up following me and being very nice and stuff like that. And, I've no doubt that out of this, even if we come to disagreements, that you and I will stay in touch. And I just think that that's something beautiful that can come of social media, but it takes the willingness to make it real. Does that make sense? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, definitely. I think that is, yeah, what you've done here, reaching out over the keyboard to kind of make a real conversation happen is I was thinking there's definitely something worth in that. And then at the same time, I think I happen to be a performer, so I was happy to do this kind of thing. I think most people who are engaging on social media probably, would be too shy, or they might be completely well informed, have the courage of their conviction, not the ass kicking guy, but people, even the ones that have called you racist, where that if that comment, if you did say it verbatim, if you didn't leave out some really sinister wording,
I don't think
I didn't think sounded particularly racist. I was thinking, would I jump on that? Possibly. Depends what mood I'm in.
Yeah.
Really depends what mood I'm in. But yeah, so I think it's not necessarily fair to kind of criticize people for not wanting to do this as just because they've commented. And I don't think because you post a comment on social media, it necessarily means you should have to back it up in person. It's a different realm. We've created a new realm, haven't we, of conversation, a new layer of socializing, and it is part of that is the anonymity. First, it's our language, but I can't say all the words. Being anonymous means it is part of it. It's baked in. It is baked into it. Even if you have your real name and face on the profile, it's still anonymous. You're still not, having a face-to-face conversation like we are now. So, yeah, I think what you're doing is of worth, and I think it would be. I would definitely be interested to, see you continue this, and obviously not as regularly as you'd have a proper guest.
Right.
If you could pluck, other people from the kind of depths of the internet comments, I think it would certainly be interesting.
Thank you. Yeah, I think you're right. I think that it's a big ask, especially for people, like my podcast is fairly new, but it is a public forum. I've offered other, like, let's do a Instagram live or something, but it is, you are used to getting up there and, thinking on your toes and things like that, which you have to do in comedy more so than almost any other field. And for people not to be willing to do that, I think you're right. I think that I have to take that into consideration. I guess I'm just putting that truth up against the other one, which is I am really disturbed by the lack of humanity that we're showing ourselves, to be on social media. And I'm upset with the polarization. It's why I started this whole podcast. The cylinder, the circle, and the square, and all that kind of stuff is like, we're not communicating. But did you see the Mr. Rogers documentary? Won't You Be My Neighbor? Are you
No.
familiar with Fred Rogers?
I've heard it only in reference, but I think, is this an American show, presumably?
Yeah, he's like an American children's television host, but he
yeah, right. Okay, so I've heard it referenced in other American shows.
Okay.
I don't know what it is.
Yeah, just like the real deal, like really sweet man. But he was, when television was first invented, he was watching it and he goes, wow, what an amazing tool. And he was watching the children's programming, and it was just a lot of fighting and blowing things up and smashing. And he was like, it's such a shame that this amazing tool of television is being used in this way for our children. He wanted to do something different and model something different and show how television could be used for just a wonderful force for good and positive change. And he didn't do that for television, because look at television today, but he did in his part of it. And I when I saw that part of the documentary, I go, oh, that's what social media seems like to me. It's like, this is a place where you can get educated and connect with people and learn. And I understand that that's a pipe dream and sounds really like floofy, but that's kind of why I'm doing it. And I understand what I'm up against, and that people don't take it nearly that seriously, I suppose.
Well, it's interesting. It is toxic. As I said, I needed to leave Twitter, and part of that is, I think you're right. I think people don't necessarily take it seriously, but part of the reason I left Twitter is that I noticed my feelings I was having when I was engaging with these toxic arguments was spilling over into my day-to-day life. I would be a bit, I might snap at my wife, or I might come out of that argument, especially if I lost, as I saw it. So that there are times when, and I'm definitely guilty of this, online you'll get into a thing and you'll start off with your head above water. You kind of vaguely know what you're talking about. This, I'm talking not so much for someone like yourself, but your average commenter, who might be kind of fairly well informed but not thorough in their knowledge. So you start off with your head above water, and then quickly you might drift into, you're just kind of saying stuff now, and it's not really true. And someone might come back with a stark fact, and you'll go and Google it, and you'll be like, yeah, he was right, that guy. Oh, I'm an idiot. Yeah. And then I would feel like crap for the rest of the day. I can't remember what it was. It was some, occasion that me and my wife were enjoying. I was like, wow, it's ruined this a bit, because I just had something like that happen where I felt like, oh God. And sometimes I have quite a thick skin with insults and stuff like that. But yeah, it's not nice, is it, if someone, calls you a something, or says they want to kick your ass, or whatever. It doesn't feel very good. And I think I'm probably very guilty of upsetting people if I get carried away with the stuff I'm talking about, because I do, as I say, I do have quite kind of strong opinions politically, I would say. And I feel quite passionately, as we all do, that I'm right. So
for sure,
in my beliefs and opinions, so yeah, it is toxic. How would one address it? This is a step, what you're doing right now.
Yeah, maybe trying to model this a little bit for people out there listening or who catch this. One of the things that I've found, and I know on Twitter it's like the egg comments, it's like people that don't have like a profile, is the more often than not that I've found that the more vicious people don't have anything that has to do with their self, because you don't want to trace it back to them. And I've been called a coward so many times by people that don't put out their face, and I'm just like, well, but like, this is me. Like, you see my face, and I've sent this is another weird thing I've done, is when someone's being really vicious to me, is I'll send I'll hold my phone and make like a video, like, hey, just want to let you know there's a human here. My name's Will, and if you would like to talk, you can send me a video or anything like that. And it doesn't usually go very well. They ignore it or something like that.
I mean, that if I got one of those, that would definitely have an effect on me. I'd be like, oh my God. Even following your Instagram, I thought, I mean, I don't as I say, I don't think I was particularly nasty to you. I
No,
think
you
I was,
weren't. You weren't. That's
I
true.
was, definitely sarcastic. You know, I
Yeah.
read back the comment, and I've read back previous comments and thought, "Ooh," you know,
No, it wasn't.
yeah.
It wasn't.
But having followed your Instagram, I was glad of that, because you do start to see the human. You posted something the other day with your kids on the beach,
Yeah.
and I was like, wow, you know, this is a guy, isn't it? Who's living a life, enjoying a time on the beach. And yeah, it is, it's a strange tool that we have had for what, 5 years, 6 years? I don't even
So,
know.
so new. Yeah.
It's less than 10, isn't
I
it? This
know.
common culture of people, and it's so powerful. I don't think any of us have had a chance to catch up at all,
Yeah, we're
or really
really figuring our
even,
way through it. I'm sorry.
like you say, take it seriously. The idea that it might be having an effect.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, when you can be anonymous, like you can really do some, you can like the worst elements of you when you, it's almost like when you like if you're uber rich, you have like fu money, then I don't know if like power corrupts or if power reveals. And there's some power in being anonymous, and you can kind of play with it. I actually, I told you a little bit offline, I'll go into it now. I had when my first son was born, there's a lot of like late nights where he was sleeping, or I was kind of rocking him or taking him for walks or something like that. And he can't talk to me yet. So I got on my phone and I started a troll account. And I started with my buddy from high school, and I would post, and I thought of myself more as like Batman and the Joker. I kind of went off after like bullies and tried to just say like ridiculous comments and stuff like that. And it was really fun. It was a tremendous waste of time. Um, but I was like, I've had a lot of friends that are stand-up comedians, and I've been in the comedy kind of scene for a while. Never had the guts to get up on stage myself like you, but it was like an outlet for me to be funny and for me to like take like kind of elitists down a peg a little bit. Like that was, and it was really fun. So I get why people are out there. And as comedians, there's a lot of brilliant people just making funny comments on Reddit or social media. And it's like, it's a real outlet to get your creative juices flowing too. Do you use it for that?
I hope not.
No.
Just because it is so toxic, and I think I'm not very good at that sort of humor either. I could never do the kind of short tweets that would get lots of kind of recognition and likes. Any stand up, like the kind of, yeah, it's all fairly drawn out in
Mm-hmm.
terms of a build up. You probably overuse words, if anything. So I was never particularly good at that. I do think it tests your chops a little bit in terms of debate or discussion.
Yeah.
I do think that it does, like the embarrassing times on Twitter when I said something that I thought, well, that might be true, but
Right,
it
right,
backs up my point.
right.
And that being sort of pointed out by someone, it did make me think, okay, look, be informed, like be bloody sure of what you're saying, which is, I think, a real positive sort of development. Just to just, if you are going to say something, know that it's at least true.
Yeah, but again, people don't have to do that. Like you might hold yourself to that standard, but there's a lot of people that have no standard. I mean, getting back to the anonymous thing, do you feel like because you've admitted like you kind of go on and hunt a little bit for someone to like jump on,
Mm.
do you purposely remove your kind of humanity out of your profile? Because I think you have like your dog as a profile picture, but you also have pictures of yourself and you like,
My Instagram is just personal, yeah, and I
yeah,
wouldn't.
okay.
So one thing on that is I have other sort of social media accounts
Hmm.
for comedy,
Right.
under a different, like I have not a stage, it's a stage, I suppose it is a stage name, just a different second name.
Hmm.
And then I have the thing for making videos. So I'm trying to make music videos and like corporate videos for,
Yeah.
like HR training, that sort of stuff.
Right.
So I would never use either of those to comment on something political, because I'm really acutely aware that that's like you don't want to potentially alienate. I don't have
Right.
a big following on either, but I wouldn't want to necessarily draw that into my political views or
Yeah.
that kind of thing.
Yeah,
So
that
like
makes
in the,
sense. Yeah.
I wouldn't use this to plug either thing, because this is me talking about, and if we were to get into the ins and outs of democratic socialism, I'd probably have some what in America would be considered extreme
Right.
views. From what I watch the television, if you watch Fox News,
Wow.
you want to
Yeah.
get me out. You want to get me out of the country. I'm dangerous. So
I
yeah,
wouldn't
I
judge
am
us by
aware.
Fox News alone, but yeah.
No, I know. I just always wonder, what do right wing people watch? What do
Right.
they?
That's true. That is,
Because
well,
you don't have the choice, do you? Like, you haven't got. There's no other outlets that in the
for the right.
mainstream media.
For the
That
right.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, there aren't others.
No.
You either get the extreme of Fox News, or you have to sort of
There's some
mill through
online.
the.
Yeah, there's some online, but it is harder. Well, that can, I mean, I think we can get into a little bit like um when we had a back and forth, and we were talking about like free market capitalism, and I mentioned something that I'm looking out for, like small business. My wife's a small business owner. We have 12 or so employees, and I worry about the over regulation because it affects our ability to provide for these people, a lot of single moms and stuff that work for the company. And
Mm.
said something, and then it's probably like sarcastic, uh, but it doesn't always read over comment section. There was a great
I
comedian. Um,
Sorry, go on.
oh, just real quick. There was a great comedian. Have you ever heard of Arj Barker?
No, I don't think
Okay, I
so.
don't know if he's still doing it. This is probably 10, 15 years ago, but he had a great joke where he was essentially, we use text so much that we need better fonts. And he said, there should be a font called Sarcastica. You write it and it's like, oh, like great party, Arj. He's like, what an asshole. He's like, no, what do you mean? He's like, you wrote it in Sarcastica. Like, I think that we miss that stuff. I'm very sarcastic too, but I try, and I'm very dry and stuff, but I try to avoid it on social media because it gets mixed up. But what is your take essentially on the idea of democratic socialism in America, and your experiences of it in Europe, and where do you think that that people, maybe myself or others, might get wrong about it?
Well, I think I mentioned to you before we started the meeting
Mhm.
over text that I even find the term democratic socialism. I think in your, I remember now what it was in your comment that triggered me.
Yeah.
You said something about socialism. I'm not so keen on the socialism. And then you said something about the free market. Two
Okay.
things where I'm like, oh, there's no free market, I think. So that's what triggered me. And then with
Gotcha.
democratic
Gotcha.
socialism, I struggle uh, with the term because Medicare for all, that's probably the poster policy of democratic socialism.
Mhm.
Uh, for me, I don't see where in the definition of socialism that that sort of nationalizing healthcare is socialistic, really. Um, I think it, and in the same way with capitalism, if you look at the definition, I don't like to just go to dictionary definitions. It's reductive, but in this case, I don't see how having healthcare as a public option is in conflict with the definition of capitalism, and I don't see how it conjures the definition of socialism. In that socialism to me is the means of production. What is it here? It's the means of production, distribution, and exchange of goods should be owned and regulated by the community as a whole. I mean,
Which is
unless you're
not
going to,
the, yeah. That's not what's being
which is,
advocated. Yeah.
yeah, nothing like that. And then with capitalism, I think, uh, so countries' trade and industry are controlled by private owners for profit rather than by the state. Trade and industry, I mean, the healthcare industry, you could argue is an industry, but to separate it like that, I think is okay. I have a question for you in that
Yeah.
regard.
Sure.
I'm genuinely suspicious of the idea that anyone believes that healthcare is a product or commodity that falls under that bracket of capitalism, that
Uh,
should strictly be controlled as a product by private industry, just because
um,
healthcare is fundamental to existence? And why do you not then have the police force as a private industry?
Yeah, so I actually have a lot of like ANCAPs, like anarchy capitalists that follow my stuff, which is interesting because I am not. I had Paul Song on the podcast, one of my early episodes, who's a huge advocate for universal healthcare. Healthcare is it's so complex. He shared some stuff like there's actually like a lot of barriers to entry for a lot of companies. So it's actually not a free market at all. That in a lot of areas around the country, there's only like one provider or maybe two providers even available for them in that state. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that I am like a complete free market person because I think regulations are needed. Look back at Upton Sinclair's The Jungle or the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire and stuff like that. I think that's really important. I believe in a fair game. I have family members who live in the Philippines or from the Philippines. My wife was born there. And that's one of those things where if you come in with a broken arm and you don't have money, you don't get fixed, period. That's it. You just send you off the street. They'll send you out to die. And in America, you can't get turned away. So they will treat everyone, and just like eat the bill basically because they have to. But that causes all kinds of costs to rise up. I don't know what I'm all for what is the best system. I don't know what it is. That's why I had Paul Song on. I want to continue the conversation. But I don't like monopolies. And if that's a monopoly, by our government, I don't like that necessarily. And I don't like monopolies by private industry. When we talk about like the police force,
Mm.
even that, there's additional you can get. So you can have the regular police force, but in a lot of areas of this country, it sucks. So, you get private security and stuff like that. You can get extra. So maybe it's something like that in healthcare where you get the basics. But if you want anything good, it would have to be more. I'm not sure. I like the idea of a fair game, I think in general, but that's outside of healthcare.
So how do you characterize this idea of democratic socialism? What to you makes Bernie Sanders, what would you call him, a socialist over a capitalist, for example?
Yes, I would choose him socialist over capitalist. I've seen him, people say, someone went up to him with a book, said like, will you sign this and just write capitalism, like the greatest economic system ever made? He's like, no, I'm not going to sign that. Like some troll guy. And he has, in the past said things that he's very much for. I mean, he was supporting a lot of like the communists and stuff like that. I actually don't mind Bernie Sanders. I donated to his campaign in 2016. I liked Bernie Sanders about a lot of things. I'm by no means like a far right person. I mean, I love Tulsi Gabbard and Andrew Yang actually going into this, but the I guess what I worry about is the way that I've studied. It's actually hard in American schools. I don't know how they were in the UK, but in American schools, we focus a lot on Nazism and when the right wing goes too far. And we don't focus much at all on the Soviet experiment, Maoist China, anything like that, and where the left wing goes too far. And I have to believe that if there's a too far right, then there is a too far left. But we aren't aware of it. So I go down the road of learning about this stuff, and it's really ugly about how wealth is vilified. I don't think that wealthy people are bad inherently. I look at Bill Gates, and he's going to cure malaria. Elon Musk is going to, maybe make some sort of solar battery that's going to fix our climate change just disaster. So certain billionaires, I want to have more resources, and then other people, the people with the gold-plated yachts on Instagram, I want to take their money, but it doesn't
Yeah.
really work like
Yeah.
that, So I don't know if money is the issue, if it's more just like how they do it. And I don't like how Bernie won't even acknowledge the positive aspects of semi-free market capital, the positives of capitalism have had and in the West, and people like Bill Gates, Warren Buffett, the Gates Foundation, all that kind of stuff. Like, why can't they exist together? I feel like he's vilifying wealth, and that just historically, as a history teacher, is scary to me. If that makes sense.
Why is it scary in a historical context? It does make sense, and I do understand what you're saying. It's interesting to hear because I do vilify wealth probably.
Yeah.
I would go as far as to say I think the existence of billionaires is in itself a problem. So I would say in that regard, I think if you've got a system that's enabled someone to accumulate and hold on to so much wealth that would I say immoral? I don't know. Sometimes I feel like it's moralistic, and then sometimes I feel like it's just pragmatic. I think it's a problem to even have billionaires. I think Elon Musk is a complete freak
Yeah.
example of a billionaire that's using it for genuinely cool stuff, because you sit there as a normal person, you look at billionaires and you think, if I had that, what could I do? And Elon Musk he's made electric vehicles a thing, which they were not 10 years ago. They were a joke. And now Teslas are like a status symbol, which is incredible and incredibly beneficial. And obviously SpaceX is very cool.
Yeah.
If we go
And
to
who knows
Mars,
what
that's
could
very
come
cool.
from it. Yeah. But I guess that's what I'm getting.
That's not enough for me. Just because he's such a freak occurrence, we get one Elon Musk. When he dies, that's it. The dream's over for if he dies prematurely, the dream's over for Tesla and SpaceX. We'll just never get a guy like that again. So I don't think someone like that is a kind of reasonable excuse for having a system that allows. Is that the kids?
Yeah.
That allows billionaires. So I probably would vilify wealth in that regard, just because you can't have it without someone else suffering. So in Britain, I think it's probably that we do have billionaires, but I think it's certainly probably harder.
So you see it as a zero sum game. Like if I make more money, then you make less, essentially.
No, I think if you make.
So why do people have to suffer for you to make $1 billion?
Because $1 billion is immeasurably more. So if you make more money, I think that's fine within a certain kind of range. I think $1 billion, I think it's really hard. We say it a lot now because we've got a lot of famous billionaires, but I think it's really hard to conceptualize what $1 billion means, how much it is, how much more it is than $1 million. Being a millionaire versus being a billionaire is like being a kind of human versus being a chimpanzee in terms of the scale of power, influence, and I suppose it just infinity of your wealth at that point. So I think that's the problem. I personally, I would call myself, that's why I have a struggle in this country. I'm a democratic socialist, definitely. That's what I would be, that would be a fair kind of bracket to put me in. I consider myself a capitalist, just one that thinks you should have serious regulation, very thorough regulation. And I don't have any kind of cynicism about government that holds me back in that belief. In terms of, I feel like government is 100% equipped to deal with money and spend it efficiently. Because I know this is an idea I've come across a lot in America. It's quite amusing to me. I want to work it into my stand-up somehow, but I really don't want to offend or alienate people because I want to make money. But I find it so funny that you guys are so cynical of government, yet at the same time so passionate about it, about the politicians you like.
Yeah.
You guys have a much better understanding of your own system than we do of our own system. I think if you go into an American high school, obviously I've never done this, but I would guess if you ask those students who their congressman is, there's a fair chance a good few of them will know. I think if you went into a classroom in Britain and asked who their MP was, I think it's very unlikely, unless it's one of the big personalities, a Boris Johnson or a Jeremy Corbyn. They're not going to know. So I find it fascinating that you guys are so cynical of it, yet so kind of embroiled in it daily. It defines who you are if you're a Republican or Democrat in this country.
It really does. I mean, that's something that I'm hoping it won't be like that. It's a phase. But a couple of things, like living in LA, if I drive through Bel Air, you see these just massive houses, huge gates, and just big things. I was in Malibu yesterday, and I was on Carbon Beach, which is really nice, right by David Geffen's house, and it's all these big houses, $25 million each, just like one after another. And I look inside, and I mean, they're empty. No one's there. No one's sitting out on the porch, just like taking it in. There's, I mean, beautiful beaches, unbelievably gorgeous, dolphins jumping out in the ocean. And they're empty. They're empty houses, used a few times a year by people. Like, I get why that stirs up anger. I really do. And I remember looking at that. I made a quick video. I don't know if I posted it, but I was just like, this is causing anger. Yes, you're allowed to spend your money anywhere you want. Yes, you can. That is part of it. The second part of it, I think you and I might have gotten into what led to this on the comment section, was the amount of government subsidies. The fact that, General Motors gets, billions of dollars or whatever it is. And the corn industry gets $4 billion a year. Just here's a bunch of money to make high fructose corn syrup that we're going to put in all these kids' food to basically poison them. Like all of that
Something
stuff.
we don't have in Europe, actually, high fructose corn syrup. Never heard of that until, so Coca-Cola in Europe is made with sugar.
Yeah.
And yeah, I'd never heard of it. And I can't drink American Coke. It really upsets my stomach. So.
Oh yeah. I mean, vegetable, all these the oil industries, all of these kind of stuff, a lot of it's just subsidized from the government, and it shouldn't be. And if you are a free market capitalist, then you should be angry at that, because that is not a fair game. We should want a hierarchy of competency in society. So the people this is the Enlightenment principles. Like, the people who are at the top should be the best. And anytime that you stack the odds to just help those who are already at the top to keep their power and crush the little guy who has the new idea to come up, that is not sustainable. And people are going to turn against it. They're going to buck against it. And that's something that I think is really important, where I'm guessing you and I agree is, there has to be a fair game to be played here, so that young people who are, poor or, not living in Bel Air can go, hey, if I work really hard, I can rise up. I get the anger there, but for every person that has that, there's also Bill Gates, who made his money maybe stealing some programs and stuff like that from his employees to some degree or whatnot. But now with all of his wealth, he is making waterless toilets. There's a great documentary on Netflix about making waterless toilets. He's cutting down, he's saving millions of lives, millions. And the only way you can save millions of lives is with the resources to do something big like that. So I'm in this position where, like, I don't want those people who buy 6 houses in Carbon Beach in a row and just leave them empty and, don't help make the world a better place. But if we crush that, if we get rid of billionaires, I worry that we're going to get rid of Elon Musk and Bill Gates too. And I don't know how you don't throw the baby out with the bathwater, is I guess what I'm getting at.
I would definitely throw a lot of babies out with the bathwater. I would throw those guys right out. I do hear what you're saying. I think, again, yeah, like I said, Elon Musk is a bit of an unusual example, and you certainly wouldn't get an Elon Musk in Britain.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be possible for someone to, I think, gather that amount of resources and then confidently set them on fire. I believe his first 3 rockets for SpaceX exploded, and he put all of his money on the last one. It's a uniquely American story, definitely. You wouldn't get it in Britain, which isn't by any means a socialist state, but more towards that side, what you guys would call social democratic socialism, I assume, is how you would categorize the British system.
Well, do you think that that's part of
but one thing I did want to say to your point of taking that money away from billionaires, because of my belief in government, I would say it would be better to take all that money from billionaires, give it to government, and have the state have a focus on improving the situations for those people in that country, so you don't need a Bill Gates to step in and fund a waterless toilet, which I'm sure for him is a great tax deductible
Yeah, I
donation.
don't
Not
know
to
if
be
he's
too
doing it for that,
not to
but
be.
yeah,
Well, that's the thing. I'm really cynical of
right.
that kind of person. I think Bill Gates is probably the Bill Gates Foundation. Like all, in my opinion, billionaire
Mm,
foundations are nothing more than kind of virtue signaling and tax deduction. It's a great way to say, hey, look, billionaires are great. We save lives. You need us. Don't let the government take our money. But really, that it's a drop in the ocean compared to probably the damage their company has done. I mean, I don't know. I'm not too much of an expert on Microsoft's manufacturing
mm.
practices, but I highly suspect that they
Probably
exploit.
Foxconn or something like that. Yeah,
Someone's getting
yeah,
exploited somewhere, aren't they? And then mineral extraction to build the machines, all the way down the line. I think the kind of the blood on their hand, and that's probably too extreme, isn't it? The sort of mucky nature of accumulating, of building a business that accumulates that much wealth probably outshines. I don't know what else has Bill Gates done. The sort of the
yeah.
reading things in school, or I'd rather just give all those. Excuse me, I don't know if was that me or you?
No, we're good.
Okay.
Oh,
Yeah, I sorry, I just had a noise in my
oh,
ear.
sorry.
So yeah, I think it would probably be better to just give all that money to the government. But then that's where we really disagree. I would think someone like you and I
That's
is that kind of belief I have in government and the belief you have in the private sector.
yeah. I
Um,
wrote that down. I think that that's spot on. I think we found it. I think that it's essentially who do you have, and you have specific stories, anecdotes of your own, and stories that you've read and everything like that to show this is probably a better place to put our resources. And I have the same for the other side. I worry that if you give extra resources, I look at the way our government sends these subsidies, the military industrial complex, just like making missiles and stuff like that, all kinds of stuff like
yeah,
Raytheon and DARPA and stuff like that. I don't want to give them more money to make more missiles. I don't want to do that. I want to try and have entrepreneurs make some sort of positive positive influence. And as much as Jeff Bezos seems like a tremendous asshole, I like Amazon, and it's pretty convenient and it's nice. And I like having, whoever invented Zoom, is probably really rich right now, but it's nice because I get to have this conversation. So it's a really tough kind of place to be in, but I think we hit it. I think it's just it's our personal experiences that, and where we come from and the narratives we've kind of been told, that we kind of just like, all right, I have to put these eggs in some basket. All right, I'm going to put them in these baskets. Both of our baskets have potential to get really screwed up and get gross, but I'm going to go with this one because I think it's the best place to do it. I think that's probably accurate.
yeah, well, absolutely. And I think in
Yeah.
this country, it's definitely the cultural lean is towards cynicism of government. It really is part of the American character.
Well, it's how we got
Um,
started, right? We broke away from you guys. We're like, hey, we don't
well,
trust,
yeah,
you don't
this is
tax us
it.
2%. Like we started this whole thing just like down with government, you know?
All of my liberal opinions all come back to my own nation,
Yeah.
just causing horrific atrocities. So yeah, it all comes back to essentially it's my fault. Um, but I would say to that point, the idea that America was set up with cynicism of government being part of it, and I think that's been deliberately, I would say, miss kind of construed over the past 40 years, 50 years in this country. So the kind of since the Reagan boom time, since the what I would call the new form of capitalism, which is this, kind of focus on channeling money up. And I think whilst it's, I wouldn't want to sit here, certainly not now that we're not on internet comments face to face, and say to you, all of the things you think are as part of an elaborate corporate con
Mhm.
to make you believe that it's better to just give a bunch of extremely wealthy people even more wealth because the government is so incompetent that they would squander it all. I think that is yeah, as much as I don't like saying that, I kind of think that's true. I think
Yeah.
the kind of American idea that of cynicism of government in specifically in the context of kind of financial welfare programs and taxation, I think is a deliberate con by the corporate elites over the past 40 years to just make a lot of money. And they've become billionaires. And part of the success of them has been this sentiment that, let them do it. Don't let the government taxation is theft.
Right.
Um, which I think is really not in the spirit of America. I think the spirit of America actually is the opposite of that. I think the government, the American political system, I marvel at. One of the reasons I didn't live here on purpose. I came over, met my wife, who's now my wife, fell in love, and sort of had to move over there because of that, because she wouldn't move to England. She's not into bland food. So um, I but I did have an appreciation of the country before I did American studies as part of my college degree. Uh, and yeah, part of my love for the country is the political system. It's brilliant. It's unlike anything else in the West. It's the Constitution is a remarkable kind of political document, a feat of the West. The ideals, the lofty ideas, and the foundations of this country, I think, are really powerful, and it's all come from government. I think everything good you have has come from government. The being able to tame the land. Obviously, you have to, you know, remember that slavery was used, so there was a bit of a cheat there,
Yeah.
a nasty cheat. But you conquered this land. You created Manhattan Island in 300 years or whatever less. You know, there was nothing. Not to disparage the native people, but comparatively, in terms of infrastructure, nothing here. And now look at it, incredible. And that's all come from the government. You got to the moon. You took man to the moon from this little rock of ours to that other little rock. No one else could have done that except for the United States government, and they did it with the kind of benefit you get of having a huge taxable market. Back then, I don't have the figures here, but I believe the top marginal tax rate was somewhere in the region of 90%. Um, and people were still rich, man. People were still having a great time. It's not like, there weren't still haves and have-nots, but it was just, it was a
Yeah.
remarkable resource to do remarkable things. So I think, yeah, I think
Yeah, I mean, so
that's
there's a lot there to probably like, that we could like discuss and talk about the 90% tax rate, how many actually paid 90% and things like that. There's a lot, I don't know if you read Alex de Tocqueville's, you know, uh, Democracy in America book. It's, he was like an outsider talking about how the kind of like the opposite, how America was a lot about the individuals and stuff like that. Just having, I think there's just different narratives out there. And I'm not saying that, Daniel, you're like incorrect. What I'm saying is that there is other ways that you can view this. The whole cylinder radio thing is there's also other ways when you look at, Harris Rosen in Florida and what he's done for like individual communities, being a very wealthy person. I think that where we can agree is that we want a fair game and things like that, but we're going to probably disagree on the reasons why success has happened the way that it did. And you might see it as, and you can always pick out data to support the idea that it was the government funding these ideas and pushing the best ideas through. And then I'm sure that I could, or someone else could, pick out data to say that it was in spite of government that we were able to do this. But those are the fun conversations to have. And I think that that's really good that we can do this. And I think like over a dinner or something like that, two chaps could sit down and just like have it out and disagree. And, we could Google stuff and share ideas. And then maybe both of us kind of come to a walkway with a little bit more, awareness. And I think that that's just to kind of close it out. I think that's just really hard to do on social media, but maybe this, hour that you and I just did could be a little bit of a model. And, just encourage people to remember that there's someone else on the other side of that screen, real person with real ideas, and they are valid in why they think what they think. They might have ideas that are mistaken. They might have wrong facts or something like that, but they are passionate for a reason that you can find out. And maybe they want to grab onto, ideas or ideologies that we see or individuals see as just blatantly false, but there's something behind why they support this narrative. And I think we can get to that and learn about it. And if we can do it in a very human way, maybe we can model something better. So Daniel, thank you for doing this. This was fun. This is a new kind of experiment. I hope the
Yeah,
people
thank
listening
you.
saw this as something positive. Is there anything that you want to this is, I usually have like someone who has, a bunch of things to plug or anything like that. Is there anything like that you want to share? Or?
No, like I said, I think
Yeah.
I'll probably keep all of that separate for now. I
Yeah.
do want to start getting
Understandable.
political with my comedy, but I don't know how to do it in a kind of productive way at the moment.
Yeah.
I would be part of the division at the moment. But yeah, I also I don't want to alienate people. But
Right.
I had a good time. The hour flew past. It's
For sure.
definitely made me think just before I even came on here about the reasons why I might engage on social media, and made me question my sort of sense of righteousness,
Yeah.
which is probably the most important thing, isn't it? And I think the part of the divisions in the country, well, we know they have been manufactured in part by social media in the comments section
Yeah.
through foreign entities
Yes.
actually
Right.
deliberately stirring this pot. And I think I have probably been part of that. I think I've probably responded. There's a good chance I've responded to a Russian troll,
I think so. Yeah,
or
probably me too. Yeah.
or shared something along those lines. So it is a serious
Yeah.
issue. And
Yeah.
I applaud you for what you're doing. It's really cool to share your platform with a complete kind of internet nobody. And I think you should, yeah, definitely do it again.
Cool.
And you've
Well,
got a probably fairly sporadic listener. I'll listen in
I do.
every now and
Yeah.
again, and I'll get angry about
Yeah.
the things you guys are talking about.
Yeah.
Oh,
Well,
but
hopefully
yeah, thank
hopefully
you
it'll be
very
a
much.
mix. That's my aim. All right,
Yeah, of
Daniel.
course. No, it was last time. It was.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir. Take care.
All right, great. Thanks, mate. Take care.